meetings up to this point focused on communicating with specific customer groups. And today is the point where we come back, we present what it is that we heard from each of those customer groups. And then we leave the floor open a little bit further to take further input. We'll also talk a little bit about what some of our future plans are going to be with the feedback that we received. Before we jump in though, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the folks that are here in order to help with this. And first of all, my name is Ty Irwin, Chief Customer Officer for Grant PUD. We've also got some of our commissioners here. So Tom Flint is here. We've got Judy Wilson here and Nelson Cox joining us here tonight. The others are busy this evening, but good representation. Majority of our commissioners visiting. Rich is not able to join us tonight, but we've got a significant number of other folks from the PUD able to answer any specific questions that we might have specific to rates or the kind of surrounding topics.
Do we want to do our safety brief?
We do need to do a safety brief. Thank you very much for that. So yes, let's do a safety brief. In the event that we do same doors that we came in this room, and then make our quickest exit. Are there doors at this end of the hallway, right?
There are to go out, yes.
So we'll probably head out these closest doors, and then probably the best place to muster would be to go around the building and go into the parking lot. In the event that we do need to call 911, can I get a thank you in that? And if somebody does need to search down an AED, do we know where one of those is?
No, we will do CPR and call the ambulance, but we do have a fire extinguisher back by the exit.
Okay, somebody that gets fire extinguisher volunteer. Thank you, highly appreciate it. And somebody to do CPR. If we would do that. John gives you CPR. All right, thank you for the reminder on the safety brief, and I appreciate that. All right, so as I mentioned before, this is our session to do a wrap up on the sessions we've already held, talking with each of our customer groups. First of all, today we're going to talk a little bit about what our president is, current Grant PUD philosophy, a reminder of core versus non-core customers and what that means for rates. And then we're going to talk about a couple specific things relative to rate philosophy. Then we're going to talk about our future, what our goals are going to be for the future around the rates, what feedback we received during the previous 4 customer feedback meetings, and then how that's going to end up factoring in as we look forward toward further growth in the county. All right, so just to review what we've done up to this point, we've had 4 stakeholder meetings up to this point. The agenda has been, as we shown there on the left, a good mix of rate policy growth and where the two end up merging together. We have had all of them broadcast via Teams for people to join in live, and they've also been recorded. So if anybody wants to go back and take a look at any of the other meetings, they're welcome to do that. This one will be available by recording as well. The meetings that we've had have been on the right there. Had one for ag, one for our large and small commercial, one for industrial, and one for residential rate classes. So, and then tonight, the wrap up. So let's talk a little bit about our present. As a reminder, some of the current focus areas for us around strategy in the next 3 to 5 years. We've got 5 focus areas, but I want to draw our attention first to the anchor, which is to focus on core electric customers while still ensuring the success of all of our customers. We are interested in ensuring the success of all of our customers, but as we do so, we're going to make sure that our core customers are taken care of in particular. And as we do so, we've got several of those that relate to rates. Number one, obviously, being to ensure long-term affordable rates for our core electric customers. And that is, as we regularly hear from our customers, a primary interest in mix and a priority. So we're going to maintain priority on that. Two, we're going to sustain our focus on engaged, empowered, and enabled employees. We can't meet any of the rest of the goals unless we make sure that we're taking care of our employees. Number three, we're committing to accurate and responsive customer service. That has been something that has been a new focus for us that really helps us to underscore the importance of customer service and the customer experience in our whole work here. Number four, we're going to develop an intentional power demand strategy. So that is focusing on growth and the increased demand that we've got and what we're going to need to do on the supply side in order to make sure that we're keeping up with it, as well as transmission and some of the other things that end up being key constraints in our business. And finally, number five is caring for communities through active engagement. Events like this are fine examples. And just to provide a reminder on core versus non-core customers, we make this distinction because it has existed as a key identifier in our prior rate policy and anticipate that it's going to continue to be a key component in our future rate making policy. So our core customers are our residential, irrigation, small general service, small commercial, and large commercial customers. So those are our core customers. On the non-core side, we've got industrial, large industrial, ag processing, street lighting, commercial EV fast charging, ag boiler, and evolving industry right now, which consists solely of crypto mining customers. So the reason that we draw this distinction is to be clear as we work forward in rate policy that core customers are always going to have preferential access to key resources and rates that we have moving forward. As I pointed out in some of the prior rate strategy meetings, that is not an unusual situation in the utility industry. It is fairly typical, but we are just wanting to make very clear as we move forward how we're going to handle the core versus non-core customers in rate setting policy. All right, so again, keeping with the state of where we are today, where we are currently, I want to touch on what our rate making policy has been up to this point. So first of all, just note that there are existing resolution, currently 9039 is the resolution number that sets forth some of these principles. Goal number one, gradual movement toward commission targets. And there are commission targets for core customers versus non-core customers relative to their cost to serve and where we're going to set rates. So that is goal number one. Goal number two is stable and predictable rate increases to avoid rate shock. So we really wanted to avoid the situation where we have no rate increases for a really long time and then 10%, for instance. Goal number three, we want to define core customers and preferential access. And we just talked a little bit about who fits in core customers. That's where within this resolution, the core customer benefit ends up being defined. Goal number four, any other compliance and commission directives that may come into play. And again, as we look to the future and what our rate policy is going to look like after 9039, so basically post the end of this year, there may be other directives that we want to include in our rate policy. Before I move on, I do want to just point out, people online, people here in person, if there are questions that you all have as we move along, love to answer those as we go. So feel free to throw your hand up. I'll stop what I'm doing and we'll make sure to get those taken care of. Much better to be able to do that versus waiting to the end to answer the question. And for the folks online, raise the virtual hand. Annette, you can look for that and she can get my attention. We can make sure to get those questions answered. All right, so that's where we're at currently. Let's talk a little bit about what the future looks like. First of all, we've asked these questions in some of the prior rate strategy meetings. We want to know, how does Grant PUD go forward with our rates? How should we allocate costs? How should we address increasing costs? How do we leverage rate strategy to benefit customers and communities? So those are all questions we want to understand in the near to long term. And also in 20 years, so thinking really long term, as a community, how do we want to grow? How do we balance the needs of core customers versus the needs of industry? How do we address rising costs from inflation and legislation? Questions about any of those? Okay, so those are some of the questions we have asked. And what we heard back, we're going to go through some of the main themes that we heard through each of the four rate strategy meetings that we had. What we heard back from the irrigation meeting was all ag should be in the same rate class as irrigation. So that's reflecting that currently we have an irrigation rate, but if it's not an irrigation load, everything else falls into either a small commercial or a large commercial class typically. And a feeling that there really should be an ag class so that we can make sure to have a preserved benefit for our ag customers, even above and beyond just the irrigation loads. Cost of service should not be a factor in determining rates. So that was one feeling that we had amongst our ag customers. And then the question, why not one rate for all customers? So rather than having different energy costs, we could establish a single per kilowatt hour charge that we end up using for all of our customers. And another question, what's the plan for load growth in the county? A lot of people are interested in that. We saw that question a lot through a lot of our rate strategy meetings. It continues to be a big question as we get out into the community. And then finally, rates are too low for industrial customers, hence all the demand that we're seeing. So we've talked a little bit for prior strategy meetings about the fact that we've got 3,200 megawatts in queue of load that wants to locate here. Our current system peak, we've set a record this last winter, was a little over 1,000 megawatt. So we've got over 3 times the amount of load requested as we're currently serving. And the question then is, are we priced too low and we're ending up with too much industrial demand here in the county? Moving on to commercial and industrial. On the commercial side, we got a lot of questions and interest from participants on cryptocurrency demand response programs. So those programs where during times of peak demand, where we got really high temperatures, either in the summertime or really low temperatures, and we're starting to get close to our ability to be able to serve, or at some of those peak times, we end up with really, really high wholesale prices, and it can be advantageous for us as a utility to not serve the load on our own system, and instead go out and sell that load, or at least maybe not purchase on the wholesale market, one or the other, and to actually pay customers not to use electricity during those peak times. So our cryptocurrency customers are being set up right now, those that are interested, with a pilot program where we are going to do demand response, and we're hoping to have that rolling through the summertime. On the industrial side, we got a few comments there. First, the question, what happens when Grant County's power load exceeds the pre-practice project benefits and impacts to rates, power supply, and Grant PUD finances? So what happens when our load starts to exceed our own ability to serve with the dams, with other sources to purchase power? So a lot of concern about that. Second, how do you consider the value of industrial customers to Grant County overall? Given a lot of questions we're having over how to price their load and some of the skepticism over industrial customers locating here, they're questioning, hey, how do we consider the overall value that we bring to Grant County, not just the dollars that we pay on our power bill? So getting to jobs produced, tax dollars that they pay, those sort of things. So they really wanted to see their overall value reflected. Another question, how will Grant PUD work with industrial customers to facilitate ongoing power infrastructure needs? And just expand on that a little bit more. As some of our power supply gets constrained, as transmission gets constrained, and we've still got a significant desire for industrial customers to locate here, a lot of our customers are coming forward with more unique solutions that they want to work with us on, or partner with us on, and our willingness to be able to do so, do some of those unique arrangements is part of the question here. And we are looking at a lot of those options and are certainly going to be willing to try some things that in the past have really not been necessary, but are going to be necessary moving forward. And finally, what generation resources are being considered? As we now are starting to run out of the power that is available through the dams, what else are we considering putting in next? And we can talk about that in a number of the race strategy meetings, all of the race strategy meetings, actually. Finally, on the residential side, technology advances, and lots of questions about that. We are seeing a significant amount of requests coming about as a result of AI and driving a lot of the data center requests that we have. It is not all that we've got in terms of demand requests, though. Lots of manufacturers that are interested in locating here. There's still a significant amount of other industry, food processing, and many others that are interested in locating here too. Is Grant PUD looking at conservation, demand billing, and rooftop solar programs for residential customers? So a lot of interest in what other programs might be out there that we can take advantage of that would be beneficial for them and ultimately beneficial for the utility. And there are going to be some of those opportunities coming up. To this point, our residential rates have been very, very low, and it's been difficult to make those programs really worth it for our residential customers to enroll in. But we are getting to the point where restrictions in the amount of power that we have available is going to start making that more attractive for us to offer. And I think we can start making it more attractive to some of our residential customers. How will rate increases affect low-income customers? So I was really glad to hear this question, and it is a significant concern as we start talking about what's the future look like and what do we do as rates are going to need to increase in order to cover those increasing costs. And we are definitely keeping our low-income customers squarely in view. We currently have programs, but those programs are going to be expanded, probably as early as next year. How does the cost of service affect rate strategy? So again, questions about the cost of service, what role does it play? And that'll continue to be an ongoing question and ongoing conversation between us, our customers, and the commission. Okay, so I'm going to pause before we move on and just ask, are there any particular points you want to go back to, any questions before we move on to the rest of the presentation? And I'm looking online too. We're looking out for you people out there.
I do have one. Has Grant PUD looked to use nuclear power as a solution for some of these issues?
Yeah. So the question was, has Grant PUD looked to nuclear power as a solution to some of these issues? The answer is yes. We were actually leading the pack, looking at small modular nuclear reactors for quite a little while. And a lot of interest for good reason. There's a lot of potential in that technology. We did take a step back because in the end, being first in line was questionable as far as the amount of risk we ended up putting on the utility and ultimately our customers. So we did take a little bit of a step back, but we never stopped. So we've maintained the interest in that. We maintained our agreements with some of the manufacturers, and we continue to look into nuclear. So that will continue to be one of the solutions that we're looking for on the generation side. So short answer is yes, and we'll continue to look into that amongst the other solutions that we may have on the generation side. Looking to John to look at me and scowl at me at any point if I'm saying something wrong. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for the nuclear question. Appreciate that. Okay, so some additional questions, and we're raising some of these to spark a little bit of discussion. If there is further comments that anybody would have on these, why don't you ask those and be able to get some thoughts from you all. First of all, I want to note the notes are important on these slides. So we are anticipating that rate increases are going to continue to be required in order to cover ongoing costs. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that supply chain costs continue to increase. And we are doing everything we can in order to keep those costs as low as possible and reduce the impact to our customers. However, it is a reality that costs do increase over time. And so we are anticipating that rate increases are going to continue to be needed. My own personal desire, and should show this moving forward, is to have small rate increases every year versus having periods of no rate increases and then a larger one, and then a period of no rate increases and a larger one. Really, the aim there is to give our customers predictability and something that they can count on rather than something that they kind of develop an expectation around and then get a rate shock and have to adjust to. So rather than having zeros for a few years and a 4%, we'd really rather have like even a 0.75% every year or something along those lines. So that being said, first question, what would be a fair way to allocate costs for each rate group? And I'm open if anybody has any thoughts on that. That's part of the purpose of some of this. So I'm going to let that question kind of hang for a minute. Thoughts on that? I'm looking online too. Inside the PUD, we've got a phrase that one of our senior managers coined. Let it be silent just long enough to get weird. So we're going to do a little bit of that. Cheryl, go ahead.
Just speaking to customer cost. It seems to me that it's fair to say that the industrial customers trying to subsidize everybody else.
Yeah, so large industrial, I should say industrial customers, industrial and large industrial do pay above their cost to serve, and that does help keep rates lower for marine customers. That's true.
So one of the questions here then is how far is it fair to ask them to subsidize the residents?
That's a great question, and I think it appears on the later slide. So you're pressing and what we're going to be covering later. So the question was, with the current situation, with industrials paying above cost to serve in order to keep rates lower for our core customers, how far is it reasonable to expect them to pay above cost to serve? So, good question. Okay.
Is there another way to allocate costs that doesn't involve cost of service? Are there alternate ways to do that?
Yeah, the question is, are there alternate ways other than cost of service to allocate costs? The answer is yes. Yep. Yeah, a number of different, methods that you can come up with in order to do so. One of the things that is important to me, trying to understand our business is to understand what our costs are. So that we know at least where we're setting rates relative to what it costs to serve each of our rate classes. We already don't set rates strictly according to cost of service, right? And our customers already don't pay exactly what it costs to serve them. And we've talked about that in some of the slides in the rate strategy meetings. So we already have some variation in how we allocate that. And there are other variants. So, head down the path a little bit here on the industrial side. As we get supply, generation costs that come from sources other than pre-strats and long dam, they're going to cost more. And we've been very clear at senior management commission level that as those costs come online, our industrial customers who are the source of the growth will end up bearing that cost. Our non-core customers, I guess I should say more generally. So as we do so, we are going to have to figure out how to allocate that cost to non-core customers and retain pre-strat project power for core customers. So that would be an example to your question, Cheryl, about other means other than strictly cost of service. So we're already not setting strictly the cost of service. We're going to be considering some of those other questions around generation that will take us a little bit further strictly from cost of service. Great question. Thank you. Yeah, Roger.
So along those lines, in the irrigation where we talk about ability to pay a lot, is there some thought about seeing what people do have ability to pay? There's something, I don't know if that's saying the same thing that you already said, or if that's slightly different.
I think it's significantly different, actually. I think a good question. So Roger's asking, are we considering ability to pay in setting our rates? And I will say up to this point, Roger, we really haven't. And it's not that we don't have an interest in that. Kind of two things play into that. One, we've got a pretty good understanding of what cost to serve, how that plays in. So we've got a pretty good basis there to draw from. And we have had a history, across all rate classes of having some of the cheapest rates in the nation, right? Third cheapest in the nation on the residential side of the minimum. And they've been low across all the rate classes. And so there hasn't been as much of a drive to go understand that side of it. I think your question paired up a little bit with Cheryl's first point in the how far should we expect them to pay above cost to serve, if we're talking about industrials, for instance. That is something that we're interested in, and it's something that we have talked about studying. We haven't taken that step yet. But I'm picking out one example, it's just as applicable to the rest of our rate classes too. Not something we've done to this point, but I think a very good question. Yeah, sure.
As rates go up relatively, will power will be cheaper right then?
So the question was, as power rates go up, will power remain cheap in Grant County? That's our goal. Yeah, that's our goal, and I think we've got a really, really good opportunity to pull that off. We're already starting from a great place, being some of the cheapest in the nation. The resources that we have looked at, we are being very cost conscious about what we're going to bring on, and also being very careful that we don't end up setting ourselves up to incur costs that are going to end up being significant risks. So we talked a little bit about the small modular nuclear reactor. We're considering risk for the whole thing too, so that if something unexpected were to happen and we ended up with unexpected costs, we don't want to saddle our customers with that either, right? So I think our chances are very, very good of remaining extremely competitive on the rate side, and that is our goal. The other thing to keep in mind is that while we're seeing cost pressure, so is every other utility out there. Lots of other people seeing some of the same cost pressures that we are. And they're starting mostly from a not nearly as advantageous position as we are. So hopefully that answers the question. This is great. Let me ask the first question. And we got another slide of these things. So this is awesome. Keep it going. Okay, we'll move to the second question. What should be the top priority for Grant PUD? Lowest cost power or greater reliability? That's a great question. What do you guys think about that? And you have both, Cheryl asks.
How about the greatest reliability and lowest cost?
Okay, okay. Where do you draw that line, Roger? Greatest reliability for lowest cost. I think we do pretty good on reliability. Go ahead, Tom.
So, Roger, when you framed up that question, I want to rephrase it just to emphasize. So, optimize reliability with an expectation around constraining cost.
Yeah, and I think everybody has a different need for reliability, and I think our world maybe is not quite as stringent as some others, so I think that's where some of the broad is on the cost.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
A balance to be strong, I understand.
It is. One thing that I might also kind of tweak this question on is, and I'm just gonna apologize ahead of time if we've asked this somewhere else, I can't remember, but question might be, would customers be willing to accept situations in a program that they've already signed up for, where we have interruptions or reductions in their thermostat, say, at certain times, adjustments to their thermostat in order to have lower rates? Because that's a real question for us to move forward. As we hit some of these places where we see peaks that we did over MLK weekend, there may be opportunities for us to offer services, programs that customers could save money on their monthly bill, but allow us to reach out to the customers enrolled in that program and drop the thermostat by a few degrees during those key times in order to reduce the peak for us and prevent us from either one, having to go out and purchase very expensive power, or, risk potential shutdown on part of the system. So that would be another way to look at that question. Yeah.
As a person who's been involved with multiple industries, worked at various industrial places in the past decade here in the area, I can tell you that having reliable power is very important. The amount of cost associated with an interruption in power can be very significant depending on the industry. And I can tell you that respect, it would be very important. Reliability is greater, and there's an option to shut it down, therefore there's willingness to pay to have that increased reliability. As a resident of the area, I can tell you it's very annoying to lose power, but it doesn't cost me a lot of money like it does at an industry. So it's more annoying than.
Very well put. Thank you. That's a great comment. And we hear that from our industrial customers and some of our commercial customers too. It does depend on the industry, to your point. Part of the reason that cryptocurrency customers are part of the pilot for demand response this summer is because they are very, very tolerant of taking an interruption, especially a planned one, for essentially a monetary benefit to them. Some industries work that way, most don't. and we know that. So, yeah, thank you very much for that comment. That's very true. Okay, let's move on to question 3. What should Grant PUD consider when it comes to expanding its power generation and power delivery infrastructure? Yeah,
Do you want to consider the future? I mean, Grant County is a growing county, so how are you folks going to deal with it? We talk about the future when we talk about.
so consider the future. Don't build for 2 years out, build for 25, maybe even further. Go ahead and put that. Thank you. Yeah, Lisa.
Feel in the group that I work with, feel that the PUD needs to look at the infrastructure they already have, these low voltage power line corridors that are out there. They need to really utilize those first before going out and starting to look at trying to take other personal property or even developments.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. So desire to take a look at the transmission corridors we already have before we start putting in new lines. Thank you. Any others? Okay, so let's move on to question 4. What are your thoughts about rate programs aimed at encouraging customers to reduce power consumption and peak times? See, there it is. I knew it was there. What do you guys think about that? I mean, I mentioned it, but what are your thoughts on it? We don't do any of that right now. So it's maybe something new. Yeah,
Human nature is that we'll do something if it benefits us. At the risk of embarrassing my son, he lives on a military base. Electricity provided without cost, or is included in his housing. For him to have a desire to shut off lights and shut up, adjust the thermostat when he leaves, there's no incentive. Other than me telling him when I visit, why are you leaving this stuff on? So it's natural that if we have some incentive to do something like this, it will, that's how one way you're gonna get some benefit. So I'm in favor of such.
okay, great, thank you. And giving your sons incentives, I'm surprised there aren't more people in that situation that are setting up crypto mining servers in their place, right? No cost, it'd be genius. Okay, so vote of confidence for that if there's an incentive or benefit to the customer. Others? Cheryl,
Sorry, is it original or not?
any customer. Yep. You're a resident, what do you think?
I have a question.
Give me just a sec. Give me just a sec.
Oh, sorry.
I think that times of peak demand or peak demand. I'm not sure I want to turn my heat down a lot when the Super Bowl was on. Not everybody agrees with me.
Yeah.
If you're not compelling an entire class to do it. But it's true.
So I'm hearing concerns over what the impact is gonna be, and whether customers will be willing to tolerate that to the experiment. And I also heard you say, not gonna compel them to do it, which I think is a super important thing. Maintaining optionality moving forward, I think is definitely gonna be in our best interest. I think when we start talking about compelling people, forcing people into programs that cause an impact to their life. We gotta be really, really careful about that. So certainly as we talked about some of these programs, that's one of the things I've talked about is the optionality piece and making sure that it's worth it. There's an incentive. Yeah, you had a question.
That answer part of it, Mike. When you have your feet time.
You know, actually maybe Rich, could answer that?
It depends. Usually late afternoon, probably around 6 o'clock to about 8 o'clock in the summer. And anywhere from 7 to maybe 9 in the morning.
So it has more to do with residential than it does with.
It depends. So it's definitely residential drives it in the winter, a lot of electric heating, so that's what we drive it. In the summertime, it's gonna be when everything else is on. So you're gonna have air conditioning come on when people come home. And in peak demand also, it's a little bit, you're gonna have a cost with that. So we can peak at a certain time, which might be fine because there might be solar. So once we start coming down off that peak, the sun starts coming down, that's when we start seeing prices. It'll be different depending on, there's a peak demand and then there's a peak price.
Okay.
So the question for those online that didn't hear it was, when is the peak? And generally, the peak is 7 to 9 in the morning. That's
In the winter time,
in the winter time, and from 6 to 8 in the evening-ish. It varies over the course of the year. Understanding some of that is diving down a whole other level of complexity, and Rich Flanagan can take you to look at duck curves and all kinds of fun stuff. Worth checking out at some point. Okay, good. I have more questions, you guys. I'm not done. Okay, so growth questions for our customers. So really, the note on this one, definitely important for us to say here too. As a public utility, we are restricted by state law from doing economic development. And we must serve all customers with fair and non-discriminatory rates. So we can't participate in economic development, which means we can't necessarily make decisions that are based solely on economic development. Do we make decisions that foster economic development in the end? Of course we do. We're a major enabler in the county of economic development, but we can't engage in the business of economic development, if that makes sense. So that being said, question one, what are your thoughts about Grant PUD's protections for core customers? Just go back again, core customers, residential, irrigation, small commercial, large commercial. Our non-core customers pay above cost to serve in order to keep rates low. For our core customers, they generally pay below cost to serve. So thoughts on that? I'm looking online. It's getting weird in online space too. Yeah.
So my question, comment, really ties into all three of these. But as I pondered how to, what the PUD might do regarding to reach the capacity that the dams can put out, then you gotta get more capacity, generation capacity. And if that costs more money, who should bear the brunt of it? The question is, the fair and non-discriminatory rates, does that mean that in order, an industry, let's say a large industry wants to come in and would require purchasing power at a higher rate, can that higher rate not be passed on to that large industrial user or group of users who come in after this? Can an agreement be created so that they pay a significantly higher rate than the others? Is that possible?
So yes, and it would still potentially comply with fair and non-discriminatory. There are cases obviously where it wouldn't too. So fair and non-discriminatory does not mean equal, if that makes sense. And so we currently are certainly within the bounds of being fair and non-discriminatory, even though some of our non-core customers may have above cost to serve. And that's okay. It's competitive, you know, across the United States in terms of the rates that we charge. And it isn't non-discriminatory, it isn't punitive in nature. So we're currently doing this, and it is within the bounds of fair and non-discriminatory. If we did have a customer that came in that had requirements that caused us to serve at a very high cost. So, you know, maybe they wanted us to build a power plant specifically for them, and it happened to be a power plant that produced power at a relatively high rate. Maybe they wanted some other guarantees that cost us a lot of money to provide as well. We would be obligated actually to make sure that we were recovering the revenue, recovering the costs through that whole process. And when we charge them below, at, or above cost of service is within our bounds to be able to manage our business to make that decision. So all that fits in the category of questions and decisions that we would have to make. I don't know if that makes it clearer for you or not. But.
That's fine, except is it conceivable or has it been considered that once you reach your capacity, generation capacity, that anything beyond that now you would bring on, but they would need to pay a higher rate? Is that something that's been considered?
Absolutely, it has. So one of the things the commission has been very clear on, and we're planning around this currently, and of course, rate policy, the next version is going to end up reflecting this, is that if customer class causes the cost, they bear the cost. And so where our growth is driven almost entirely by industrial growth at this point. And of course, we've had, you know, over 15 years of pretty significant industrial growth to this point. Growing through the Priest Rapids project power is absolutely caused by industrial growth. And so as we continue to add resources, which will be more expensive than the Priest Rapids project power, non-core customers will bear the brunt of that. They will bear the cost of that. We are not going to put that cost on core customers. So that decision has been made. We are going to set up policy moving forward to that end. And our industrial customers, it's been an ongoing discussion. That was actually part of the policy and the decision from years ago, 2016 timeframe-ish.
But one last component of that.
That's great.
So if that were to be, so it sounds like what you're saying then is that growth, as the growth occurs, that the, say, large industrial users, rate schedule, their rates would go up generally, even for an industry who's a large industry who's been here for 20 years. They too would also, their rates would go up. As opposed to separating them from those are existing, and now if you want to come in, you're going to pay this higher rate for two separate classes, even in large industrial.
You can do it either way, and we haven't necessarily made that distinction yet. But what I will say is that sometimes drawing a line between customers that have been here and saying, you're all going to continue to get the same rate, and anybody new that comes in with at a higher rate, is that you've still got to account for organic growth with the customers that you draw under that line. And we're already at the point of crossing the line and we're utilizing all of Priest Rapids project power. So if we did do that, we'd have to be prepared that where we drew the line would be over that line very, very quickly, if that makes sense. Yeah. Great questions. Thank you. Yeah, Lisa.
While we're still on that, I would like to stand up and say, as an irrigated farm owner and a residential owner, I'd like to thank the community for their core customer category they use. We do really appreciate that.
Thank you for the comment, Lisa, appreciate it. Okay, move on to the second question. What are your thoughts on setting a maximum that non-core customers should pay of cost of service, so core customers can remain paying at or below cost? Should there be a maximum? Cheryl?
I don't like accept charities so far. So, yeah, there should be. They shouldn't have to pay my rate more than a certain amount.
I was only willing to accept charity so far, so there should be some limit. Thank you. Roger.
Actually, that goes back to the ability to pay, so I think it really depends. Some of the ability to pay. Some of the large, that's true. Definitely appreciate it. So, yeah, large, okay.
I appreciate the comment on that. So, yeah, dependent upon the ability to pay, which I think is an important thing for us to understand, certainly. So, good point. Thank you. Any others? I'm prompting the people online again.
Not have any questions. Sorry.
All right, let's look at the third question. What should Grant PUD consider when it comes to expanding its power generation and power delivery infrastructure? Do we have this in the last one?
Yeah. You might want to,
Yes. Okay.
I want to say in relation to growth, but I think that certain segments of county, I think we're talking about primarily the industrial.
Yeah. So I got a different question. I'm just going to modify it. How about that? I'm curious about how people feel about the benefits that growth has shown so far within the county. Maybe it's concentration in certain areas of the county. So I'll throw that one out there. And then maybe some of the costs that people have seen of that growth and concentration in certain parts of the county. Anybody's thoughts on that? Joe?
It seems to me that so far the growth we've seen is big in Grant County, but in a relative sense, we haven't really seen like super explosive growth or anything like that. So most of what we're seeing now is more benefit from the downside, just because we're still relatively rural and urban areas not that big. But one of the things I have seen is very well paying jobs for kids and people who aren't very far out of school and you don't have college education that allow them to stay here. And that seems to me to be an important thing for the future, that young people are staying around. You can do very well in the data center. And I've been to a couple of them, and 75% of the kids that work there and the people that work there, those are mostly young. And most of them are from Quincy or Freighter or Moses Lake or Wenatchee. So they're staying local rather than here. And at this point, those are good things.
Great, thank you, Cheryl. So not a lot of explosive growth at this point. Mostly the growth has been beneficial. And one of the big benefits has been that people growing up in the area are able to get good paying jobs here and stay. Which I think is not.
And more than you think, I didn't realize there were working in some of those places.
Yeah. Ag data centers, you mean,
Data centers, some of these other places.
other industrials.
All these different things that have gone on. So far, the growth has been pretty beneficial. Previous out of hand, that's something that was.
Good, thank you. Let's see on the back. Any? Raquel's trying to line me down.
As a ratepayer, I live in Quincy, and you can see it in our town, how the city has, all these data centers have came into our community, but the city has used tax dollars to benefit our community with our new high school, with our new streets, with, they're just doing projects, and so I can see where they're spending the money that they're getting from data centers. And so I appreciate that because I can see where they're spending. I see it. And I also know lots of people that, like Cheryl said, that are employed by data centers, and I think that's great too.
Thanks, Raquel. So increased infrastructure, schools, benefits coming from tax dollars and creating the jobs for people in the area. What about the concentration? I'm just gonna ask that question. A lot in Quincy, right? Any questions or comments or thoughts on that?
Maybe state that a different way.
Sure. How should I restate it?
No, I'm just, because I was thinking about this. We are talking, we're trying to consider diversification. Both in the industry, the types of industry and location where we are putting our growth. And I'm wondering how everybody feels about that. Is that something that we should concern ourselves with? Because we're not in economic development. But we're also responsible to our ratepayers to not, you know.
So I'll restate it and you tell me if I'm hitting the mark through it. So the question might be, we're considering diversity in both mix of industry as well as location in the county. And how do we think about that? Because if we get too heavy in a particular industry, we could end up incurring risks that ultimately our customers bear because they're owners. Is that okay?
Did better than I could. Thank you.
Well, I got a chance to think about it. What do you guys think about that? I'm looking online again. Here,
No, I'll chime in. If they don't apply, I don't come to science. So, well, I appreciate the growth of the county. You know, growing up in this county, in a small farm out South Georgia, I'm also severely allergic to just about everything growing in this county, so I knew I wasn't going to stay in agriculture. Growth in other industries, you know, work here 34 years ago when I graduated, I might have stayed here instead of going off and do something else. You know, so it's nice that I was able to migrate back. But I think there's other people opportunities, you know, the same thing, I've got kids, if they choose to stay here and not move to that, you know, our kind of historical ag area, I think that's great. When you talk about growth and in specific industries, I 100% agree that there is a concentration risk there. And I think the discussions that are ongoing at PD, that's fantastic. And whether it's loan diversification as one risk mitigation option, or there's other risk mitigation options, finding something to risk mitigate out of that low concentration in a specific industry. I think that's what's compromise. When you talk about whether it's, load around the county, I have more difficulty with that. Somebody comes and they say they want to be in Moses Lake. It is our job to encourage them saying, hey, but Euclid hasn't had an opportunity to go yet, or Oregon hasn't had an opportunity to go yet. Hey, why don't you look over there, and maybe we'll get you over there. If there's somebody that shows up, wants to be in Oregon or Greta or West City, Mattawa, and those places, and we have the opportunity to serve them, I think that's fantastic for those communities as well. But for us to be trying to direct where in the county, I think that would be, that's going beyond where maybe our rule would be.
So some further weight behind the job opportunities, a desire for industry diversity, but some problems with the geographic diversity. Cheryl.
Yes, there is concentration of these services right now. But we're starting to see interest. Like out of the Lake, it's probably always going to have a lot of aviation and concentration there. And we're starting to see interest in things like that in manufacturing stuff. So that's now starting to concentrate in those. So there may be, and there's a lot of food processing, for instance, in here. So is it conceivable for different areas of the county to have different specialties?
Question, yeah, can we end up with different centers of the county having specialties? Data center, heavy manufacturing, heavy food processing, heavy first. Still looking for those online folks.
Yeah.
Hope they don't mind being prompt to you. Great discussion, you guys, appreciate it. All right, so next steps, where do we go from here? First of all, as a summary of some of what we heard. Strategy meetings. We want to ensure a continuation of existing or new mechanisms to protect our core load, i.e. primarily residential and agricultural customers. Two, we want to maintain stable and predictable rate adjustments. Rate trajectories are as important as targeted rate goals. Cost of service analysis needs to be assessed, validated, and trusted as only one. Value of load growth needs to be approached from both the short and long-term perspective. Large customers' load growth needs to be financially viable and self-sustained and have no impact on core load customers, particularly for the development of new infrastructure. There is some consumer interest about new rates and product offerings, such as demand response and net metering. Customers are concerned about disruptive technologies and market trends and future availability. We need to find a balance between rate attractiveness, county economic impact, and financial benefit for the utility and its owners. I think we heard a little bit of that. Somebody said this tonight too. So this is a word cloud from some of the comments that we ended up getting. Something that we said we put together to see what it looked like. You see actually some significant standouts among each of the names of our customers. Who are our customers? And they're showing up very, very broadly here. I thought it was interesting, the new. All right, so gone through this process, and by the way, the rate strategy meetings started new this year. I've not done now. If we have done that, we have done it for quite some time, and certainly this format is. Part of our intention is to approach these rates discussions in a way that is inclusive and takes into account what our customers need from us. Our best way to go out and do that is to educate our customers and get input. So, I want to talk a little bit about what our next steps are. We've gone through some of the engagement with our customers. What are we going to do next? So our timeline, June and July, is going to be used for staff to work on proposals, given what we've heard from commission, given what we've heard out of these sessions. On July 23rd, we're going to present the proposal to commission. Then August 13th through September 10th, we're going to have a commission and customer discussion on the proposal that's been presented to them. September 24th, present the revised policy draft and resolution. Discussion. On November 12th, we're going to get commission review of the resolution, and then targeting December 12th for commission anticipated approval of the resolution. And that will set our rating policy for period moving forward. We have by the way, some of these dates may change, so our plans change a little bit, but we've always got updated information on what's coming into commission meetings in the future being posted. So this is what we're planning at this point. May tweak a little bit, but roughly that's the schedule. All right, so finally, I want to ask anybody that has a desire to provide us feedback on how these sessions went, as well as any additional feedback on rates, growth, any of the topics that we've been discussing here. You know, sometimes you need time to marinate on these subjects, and later on you'll think about something else that you want us to know about. Check out this QR code and use it. Feedback on how these sessions went at the end, and some general comments. You can put in any additional thoughts you've got, rates, growth, anything else that you got on your mind. And we will have that open through the end of July, so lots of opportunity to get in there and give us your feedback.
Is that QR code going to be available on our website?
It's already there.
It's already there. Okay.
Yep.
It's already there.
And you can already get to the page that you can give us feedback on. Great question, Heidi. Thank you for highlighting. So folks, that's what we got for you tonight. I'm gonna let it get weird one last time. For any additional questions. Yeah.
Again, the core customers, the non-core customers, I noticed from ag processing, there's a non-core, you know, we live here, we're just kind of late in 58, the plant already running more than there. So without these ag processors, it's pretty hard for the irrigation guys to raise crops. I mean, a lot more crops are processed.
And process locally. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure that I can actually speak to the history on why ag processing has been in non-core, but I think it's a fair question, and we can bring it up with the commission to consider whether that lives there or not. Larry's not going to speak on it.
So when this was passed back in like 2015, we designated who core customers were. I guess I just want to go on record to say that food processing was kind of an unintended consequence at that time. So we've been having discussions about that on the commission level. That doesn't mean that they realize that social benefit, that they would potentially be a core customer because they support our industry that we have here, which is predominantly ag. It's not data centers. Data centers are obviously a large portion of our portfolio, but as far as our business here in this county, ag would be the main driver. So we are having those discussions to answer that question.
There we go. Question answered. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. Cheryl?
There's something I thought about, you're talking about alternate generation. I was listening to a county commission meeting a couple weeks ago. And currently there are 8 solar projects that at least have applied for, permission to build. How does that play into the, you have to buy that power? How does that work?
John or Rich, would you guys like to speak to that?
So, right now, we have a request for proposal that is outstanding, and we have taken in, bids, we got approximately 78 bids, back from developers. And we've gotten down to a short list, so we're starting to talk to them. That's how those folks would initially come through, our building queue. I mean, we work with shortlisted developers, and we bring that generation online. There are other routes that they can take procedurally. They can choose what's called a qualifying facility, and there's some restrictions on the size of those developments, but they could come in that way, and that is a way that they could air quote force, but we would have to come up with a method to pay the generation from. So there's both, there's an open pathway that we can partner with them, and there's kind of a forced pathway.
Thank you, John.
I think it's important to understand that on the resources that PUDs looking for is 24/7, 365 firm power, not like solar or wind, which is our 1/3 of the time resources. We need to make sure that we have the ability to take care of the party front that comes through, and then when we have a huge heat wave that comes through, we want to make sure that we have the resources to cover those extreme weather events.
Thanks, Tom. Any final questions, comments? One more from Roger.
I
Yeah,
just want to say thanks for holding this session. Appreciate it very much.
thank you, Roger. Appreciate it. Yeah, and I just wanted to do one final recognition. Doing these does take effort and time to put the presentations together, to record all the comments, to, just put everything together. And so recognition for a lot of the people that are in the room right now, Annette and Chuck being high on the list, but we also had several people speak at the panel on all 4 of these. So Carrie, Dupree, Julio, John, who am I missing from the panel? And Dave's been a good supporter as well. So a lot of help getting all this set up, and so just want to show some appreciation for the effort that went into that. And Roger, it's good to know that's making an impact. That's our intention. So thank you for that. All right, with that, let everyone get on with their evening. I really appreciate it. We do have, yes, Rafa.
It's really great odds. Yeah.
Really good odds, really good odds.
I added the Brandon Gray,
Okay.
who's been there the whole time.
Matching them.
Me too.
Choose that one, or choose that one.
Okay, so Brandon Gray, $50.
Brandon Gray, $50 credit on that.
Brandon Bill and Frank.
Frank, $50 credit on your bill. Thank you very much for coming and contributing, and nice to be able to give a little bit back for you guys making that effort. It means a lot to us. So with that, let all get on to your evening. Thank you so much for the attendance and the attention. Have a good night.
So,
Yeah.
You take care.
He's not.